All right, hey, this is Chris again. I promised that I'd give you a walkthrough of Grunt, Bower, and Wiredep, sort of this cool trifecta of tools that we have to do dependency management in the browser, in the client. First, we're going to start with Bower and what Bower actually does. So Bower is really simple. All it does is it allows you to define the dependencies that you have for your project. Specifically, things like JavaScript libraries, jQuery plugins. Every project in the world has 1 to 1,000 individual JavaScript files that they include from somewhere else, right? jQuery is a really, really great example of this. So instead of downloading jQuery and including it inside of a repository and then sending all of that code around with our own code, why don't we instead just say, hey, project, we need jQuery. Go get this for us. And ignore that folder. That's what Bower does. So Bower lets us go and look for various packages. So if we start, we can say, hey, look, I got jQuery. And there it is. I know that I can use Bower to install jQuery. And what that looks like on the Bower side of things is this file, bower.json. And all bower.json does is it lets us say, here are these packages up at bower.io at really specific versions that we basically want to like lock our package to. We could even do things like the versions of these packages can be dependent on the versions of other packages, like jQuery plugins that are dependent on a really specific version of jQuery. That's a little advanced, but you can see it here. All I do is I say in my bower.json file, which sits at the root of my project, here are my things. Here are my plugins that I need. Okay, that's great. Doesn't really do anything for us yet. Now, with Grunt, what we can do is we can say, hey, why don't we run Bower install, download these packages, okay? So basically, Bower as a command line allows us to do something like at the root of our project, we run Bower install. It reads this list and it pulls these down to a folder called like Bower components inside of our project. We get ignore that folder. We get the benefit of those packages being local, but when we push our code, all we do is we push this bower.json file and it's usable for the rest of our team to just Bower install when they get it. It's very, very cool. Now, that's well and good, but it's not actually inside of our HTML yet, okay? So normally we would have to go right inside of the head of our document. Now I'm using Pattern Lab here, so I have this little head.mustache file, and I would normally have to be like, all right, you know, script or src equals, you know, basically path to file.js. Right, great. That's tedious, and it gets really hard to manage the fact that I've got to like, I've got 20 Bower packages, and now I'm manually copying and pasting the path to each one. That sucks. So what Grunt lets us do inside of our package JSON, which once again, this is just node packages. I want to point that out. So package.json allows our project to basically use a bunch of Node.js properties, packages. So one of them you can see here, Bower. You can see Grunt. You can see Grunt CLI, and right down here, Grunt Wiredep. Okay. If I install all of these pieces, I now have a new entry that I can copy and paste into my Grunt file called Wiredep. Now, all Wiredep does, and let's see if we can walk through this process together, is Wiredep runs as a Grunt task. If you're using Grunt, you've got this ability to go run very specific tasks, and what it does is it reads your bower.json file, it reads your bower.json file, and then it's able to go find these projects, and then based on a template, inject these into any text file that you have in your project. So, as an example, if I go to head.js, as long as I include this little anchor tag, Bower.js, and Bower, I run Grunt's Wiredep, and let's look at what it says. It says, if I run Wiredep with the subtask of pattern lab, so I would literally run this as grunt space Wiredep space pattern lab, I can tell it to go look at a source folder, and then inside that source folder, inject everything it possibly finds inside of Bower.json, except, for instance, these files down here. And I can just leave these out, and Wiredep is smart enough to just ignore them. So let's take a look here. Up here in head.mustache, there's nothing. There's nothing in this space here, okay, between Bower and Bower. Now, if I go, I've got a Grunt browser here, which is part of PHP Storm, which is awesome. It lets us very, very easily interact with our Grunt file. If I go down here to my tasks, you'll see that I have a Wiredep, and then I have a pattern lab task inside of Wiredep. I'm going to run that, and all it does is it reads our Bower.json file and injects all of our libraries inside of the head.mustache. I didn't have to write any of this crap, okay? Now, something really cool to point out here, let's say I no longer need jQuery colorbox.js. Well, I could just delete this line, but that kind of defeats the purpose. I need to go into Bower.json. I'm going to go and I'm going to comment out colorbox. Let's just delete it completely, save it, and then if I run my task again, and we come back to head, you'll notice colorbox is gone, right? All we've done here is we've just said these are the packages that I depend on in my client. Wiredep, can you please go include all of these script source tags for me in a really specific file? And it does it for us. How cool is that? So that's it. That's Bower, Grunt, and Wiredep in a quick little walkthrough there. Thanks a lot. Have a good night.